Hi, I'm Matthew Herzberg, and this is the Myopia Mindset. On this episode, I've got Dr. Sukhdev Gill and Mark Cosgrove. They've come on to answer your questions about their new custom Ortho-K design software, Doctor's Own Design. It is a great episode, and if you are one of our Substack supporters, you're going to get an extended version of this episode. I invite the guys to stay on with me. We talk about so much more. They answer more questions. It's a great episode. I can't wait to share it with you. So let's get started. All right, it's time for the Myopia Mindset. This is your weekly dose of inspiration, motivation, and education on your path towards success with myopia management. And today I am super excited because I have two absolute legends on with me to talk about their product, Doctor's Own Design, which is a custom Ortho-K design software. I've got Mark Cosgrove and Sukhdev Gill on the podcast. Gentlemen, welcome to the Myopia Mindset.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having us on.
So happy to join you today.
Yeah, I've got tons of questions for you guys, but I just want to start out with doing a little bit of housekeeping. So first and foremost, for this episode, I've received no compensation from these guys from Doctor's Own Design. I reached out to them once the announcement came out in GSLS about the product. I was like on my phone going, I've got so many questions. How soon can you guys come on the show to talk about it? So just for the interest of transparency, and before we get started, I have also reached out to the audience, FIAOMC members, people on social media, fans of the podcast, because I was like, you know what? I've got tons of questions, but what does the community want to know from you guys about this product? Yeah. So if you don't know these guys, let's start with Dr. Sukhdev Gill. He is a fellow with the Academy, and Sukh is one of these guys who is designing at a whole other level. There's a lot of us who we know a lot about Ortho-K, a lot of docs who have done a lot of fits. And then you have this like a tier of like genius brain designers, and Sukh is in that category. Every time I talk with him, I'm like, dude, I think I just leveled up because I learned something new, clinically speaking, about the design of Ortho-K lenses specifically. And Mark Cosgrove, man, he has been instrumental in our industry. So many FIAOMC people and other fitters have cited Mark as an important part of their progress in their development in Ortho-K. And you are in for an absolute treat. So guys, just to start out, we're going to talk about a lot of things. If anybody has any questions about Doctor's Own Design and want to get in touch with you guys, how can they do so?
Go ahead. Sure, so you take it.
I was just going to say, probably the easiest way to reach out to us is just to go to our website at doctorsowndesign.com and fill out a contact form, or there's a little place to reach out to us and give us some information.
Excellent. Okay, so first question. Let's cover the obvious. What is Doctor's Own Design? What's the elevator pitch for the product? Mark, we'll start with you, but Sukh, feel free to jump in at any point in time. What is Doctor's Own Design?
So Doctor's Own Design is a Ortho-K design software that we've taken 30 years of my experience designing Ortho-K lenses and put it into a software. It's also a practice management tool for Ortho-K, so it does kind of both. I'll let Sukh talk more about that side of it. But from my side, what we did is, me and Sukh have been working together for a long time, and we got to talking, and he needed some help. And I've worked with so many lenses over the years. I've been doing this since I was a kid. Matt, you and I grew up in this industry together. I remember I was the youngest person there, and then you came along and made me feel comfortable because you were younger. But I've worked, I was with Visionary Contact Lens. We had our lens design there. Then when I came to GP Specialist, we represented 4 of the largest lens designs in the industry. And I always thought they all had, flaws, small flaws, like, whether they didn't work good on a low myope because they were too aggressive, or didn't work well enough on a higher myope because they weren't aggressive enough, or all that stuff. And so what we did is we put into this software 30 years experience and tried to eliminate as many of those problems as we could, or, what I felt were flaws, like small flaws, even the IC. That was my design, my baby, had flaws. So what we did, me and Suk got together, we talked, and he took what I was telling him and put it into a software. And then we took it another level. Suk did, by building it into practice management. And I'll let Suk tell you a little bit more about that part.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I mean, ultimately, if we go back to sort of the history of when we started it really comes down to me being a little bit frustrated and lazy, to be honest with you. When I was first learning how to do Ortho-K, really, I made probably every mistake in the book. And I spent a lot of time just trying to figure out a design. And, I was using the designs that were out there and having really a struggle with it, and multiple remakes, not getting it to fit right, never really satisfied with it. That's actually when, like everyone else in this industry, I reached out to other people for help. Mark was the one that really was instrumental in teaching me the fundamentals of the skills of designing an advanced lens. And I took sort of all the stuff that Mark told me and taught me to kind of mold it together into my own understanding of things. The problem I had is I had to spend a lot of time on the phone with Mark to design a lens. I wanted to say, hey, I want to design this lens for this patient. Here's the information I got, but I want to change the optic zone because the patient is got a smaller pupil size or something like that, or the diameter, I don't feel I want to go with the standard diameter. I want to change that. So you spend a lot of time with a consultant, which is great because you learn a ton. And this is how Mark and I became such good friends, because I was on the phone with him all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's the one way. The alternative to that was to reach out and get a design software that is commercially available, and you sit there and you tweak every little curve, try to get it just right to suit your patient. And so that's really the two options I had. Here's the problem. I'm an optometrist with a busy clinic. I've seen glaucoma. I'm seeing dry eye patients. I'm seeing all these things that are going on. In my practice, that was it was a challenge to try to introduce Ortho-K into everything. And I think a lot of my colleagues, when I talk to them, as optometrists, we're trying to do so many different things, and to try to introduce something new is just disruptive. Your staff doesn't want to do it. You don't want to do it. You're spending the end of the day on the phone with somebody, or tweaking in your in the little lab in the back, right, with your computer, trying to design all these curves and everything. We don't really have time for that. That's really the reality of it. And so for me, really, the idea was how do I get this same stuff done, but in a timely fashion? And so this is where Mark and I were just kind of going back and forth. And I said, well, I have a math background. I think there's a mathematical solution for this. And dug into sort of building an algorithm and designing lenses. It was super simple software that I built for myself, but I found it started saving me just a ton of time. And it was easy to design a lens, and I was designing, sending it to the lab. It was getting manufactured, sent out to me, and I was having great results with it. But that's where Mark really added his touch to everything, and I'll let Mark sort of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, go for it, Mark. What is your touch?
So Suk was my most inquisitive doctor I ever had. He came to me and he would ask questions, and quite frankly, I didn't know the answers to a lot of them. He's taught me, like you said, Matt, as much as I've taught him. I always knew how to do things. Like, oh, you told me the lens is vaulting, the lens is doing this. Oh, I know how to fix that. But I didn't know the why always. I don't have that clinical background. I just have a background in designing lenses. I've seen everything once or twice, and so I know how to fix it. But Suk started teaching me the why. Like, why does this work? And it helped me, and this is going back 10 years while I was still designing lenses for everyone. So I learned a lot from him, and just learned a lot about, lens design dealing with Suk. So then when he comes to me and he says, hey, Mark, you've been gone for a year. I've been designing my own lenses using a software. After all the conversations we had, I built it. I said, oh, send it to me. Let me see it. So I'm interested. That really interests me. I've never had a software that I really use myself. I just designed. So he sent me the software and I said, send me some examples. And he sent me examples. And what he was doing is exactly what I wanted to do. Like he had taken my brain and put it into a software and was designing lenses the exact way I would design lenses. And at that point, it, clicked my interest a little bit. I said, I've been golfing, having the time of my life. I golfed more in the last 2 years than I have in the first 49. I was having a good time, but, when Suk showed me that, my phone hadn't stopped ringing for the 2 years. I have a lot of friends in the industry. If you were an account of mine, any one of my accounts will tell you, you were more an account. We were friends. I'm very open. I talk with all of them. Me and Suk became extremely good friends, but they all had my cell phone number. So they would call me, Mark, I have this one patient that we just can't figure out. Like, what can you do to help? And so I'd help them. I'd say, oh, this is what you need to do, yada, yada, yada. Or I'd design a lens for them and say, here, give it to your lab and help out. But I was doing that more and more and more. And then, me and Suk, he just came to town to see me one time. He said, hey, Mark, I'm coming to town and, go to dinner. And I said, all right. And so we went, had dinner, and he showed me like in front of my face the software for the first time. And it blew me away.
Right.
It blew me away. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I said, Suk, how did you build this? Like, this is something that, back when I was a GP specialist, we thought about doing. When I was with CVI, it's something that we thought about doing and just we could never get it done. And then, was able to get it done.
Right. At that dinner, Matt, is when I really sat down and I said, hey, Mark, well, here's the inputs, here's the outputs we're getting. And he was criticizing it. I said, just be really critical. Where would you tweak everything? So he sat there and he kind of pulled the levers and tweaked little things and really refined the design to where, my results got even better after that. But we had that conversation and we're like, Mark's talking about all the other optometrists like me who felt like they needed more control and they needed, Mark's help. And that's where we said, listen, maybe this is something that would benefit them as well too. And so, Mark and I were talking. He's like, I got a good friend, Rich Jeffries, and he's sort of the third part of the puzzle here. And we said, well, maybe we should reach out to Rich and talk to him. And for people who maybe don't know Rich, because I think Rich is really the best kept secret in Ortho-K. He is the former president of Paragon. It was under his watch that Paragon, the CRT in specific, grew to this like massive thing that we know globally. I mean, he grew it
the global leader.
Yeah, it grew it across the world, and nobody really heard Rich. That name sometimes is just kind of buried behind the list of sort of the company Paragon, but he's the one who was the big supporter of and growth of Ortho-K. I think, Matt, you're pretty familiar with him as well, too.
Yeah, I mean, Rich Jeffries, like there's been so many key players. My experience being the executive director of the FIAOMC and creating and administrating Vision by Design, there's been so many key players who have brought a level of understanding and support to the industry and has supported the FIAOMC. And Rich Jeffries was this like amazing person who, when I first had an opportunity to sit down with him when he was during the Paragon days before Cooper Vision, and he was just like, how do I help? And I was like, what? He was like, how do I help? What does the FIAOMC need? Where do you see Vision by Design going? How can I play a role in that? And I basically just did most of the talking for the better part of an hour, and he just listened to me, and he was instrumental in helping the FIAOMC and Vision by Design get to the point it was right before the pandemic, where we were, 600 plus regular attendees, the Super Bowl of myopia management, and it couldn't have done it without him, in my opinion. Mark, you had mentioned the IC lens, and I want to bring in this audience question because this has been, this was a very popular question. So I think we should answer it. Like, is Doctor's Own Design the IC lens? Like, is that where it comes from? Is it different? So talk about it.
So short answer is no, it's not the IC lens. This is the MC lens. It's the next generation Ortho-K lens, so to speak. This is my 30 years experience doing this, talking with guys like Dr. Gill and other doctors, your father. There's been plenty of doctors along the way who've helped me out. I worked closely with Arthur Tung for years, who's a genius in this industry. But I've learned a lot throughout that time. And I took all that experience and built it into a software, and then Sukh helped figure out the math behind it. And when he figured out the math behind it, it blew my mind, because the things that I wanted to do and that we were doing with my IC lens over the years, where I would change certain things based on the parameters that came in, and I was truly customizing lenses, were happening in the software already. Like, if I was on a steeper curve, I would change the algorithm of the IC and usually flatten a return zone. Well, it was already happening. On the higher myopes, there was other things that we were doing in the background that he was already dealing with this design software. So I was like, oh man, this is awesome. But it's not the IC. I truly believe it's better. We fit a bunch of former patients and put them into this lens design. I'd say 95% of them are having better success with the new design than they had with the old. Sukh can speak more to that than anyone. He was the guy, he was fitting, 200 patients a year with me. He was not a small account. He's probably my largest account. And when I left, he has now been refitting those patients into this design. And it's just different. It's I don't want to say it's better, but to me, this is the best lens design that I have ever made.
And part of that is, I think that we would want to mention, Mark, is that unlike the previous design, which was more of a sort of a preset, a couple of like dispensing sets, things like that, we're customizing each and every lens. That's where the performance of the lens is superior, is because each lens is customized to each eye. And I like to say it this way. It's like, we're not really fitting the patient into a lens. We're fitting a lens to the patient's eye, so we're not trying to fit them into this preset fit set or something like that. We have each lens custom designed.
Right.
Yeah. And on top of that, Matt, the IC lens has been discontinued, and it's owned by Cooper Vision. And to me, that chapter of my life, although I loved it and it was a huge chapter of my life, that chapter's over. And, I closed that, and this is a new chapter. It's a new beginning, and it's a new lens design. To me, it's the next generation of Ortho-K. I really, feel like I've designed a lens that's a next level Ortho-K lens.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Who is the intended demographic? When we think of custom design software, because I have some personal experience with this, the prospect of custom design software can often be very intimidating to a brand new Ortho-K fitter. And there's this aspect of like custom design software appeals more to the advanced fitter. So who is Doctor's Own Design for? Which one of these demographics are we targeting with the product?
I'm so glad you asked this question. This is made for any doctor. We have made this so simple that if you're a new OD starting out, if you can take a topography and a refraction, you can use our design software. That's how simple we've made it. Now, the rest of the software is so powerful, and there's so much more that it does, and I'll let Sukh talk about that. But as far as designing an Ortho-K lens, you're now, Matt, say you graduated last week and you want to start designing Ortho-K lenses. You design an Ortho-K lens, you're using my 30 years of experience to design that Ortho-K lens. It's not like you're guessing at what to do, or it's, what does this curve mean? What does that curve mean? You got to put in Ks and RX and HVID and eccentricity to design an advanced Ortho-K lens with my 30 years of experience behind it. It's pretty powerful. So if you're an experienced OD and you want to, a guy like Suk who wants to do everything, wants to know everything, you have that control as well. So you can go in there and you can design every aspect of you. Like he said earlier, I wanted to, have a smaller optic zone because of this, or I want to have a larger optic zone because of this, or, I want flatter PCs because I know this patient has a really high eccentricity, things like that. You have that power, or you just put the parameters in and we take care of it ourselves. So that's, who I think it's intended for, but Suk can talk more to the power of what it does for all optometrists.
Mark, I think this probably, we ran some numbers the other day, Matt, where Mark and I were just kind of, spitballing sort of when, he's been doing this for 30 years and he's been involved in the design. We've sort of calculated over those 30 years, how many lenses has he been involved in designing and customizing? It tops 2 million lenses. And that was a little mind-blowing to me. I don't know anyone else who has 2 million lenses under their belt as a learning curve. You know what I mean? He's learned a lot over that time, and so when taking that knowledge and then making it available it's powerful for people. So yes, we kept it simple. We wanted to make sure that the software was simple yet powerful, because simple doesn't always mean that the lens is, sort of a simple or inferior design. We wanted to make sure that it was easy to use, but then we had this really powerful output from it. The software really is doctor-centric, and to sort of better answer your question, we're focused on the doctor, and it doesn't matter which level of skill that you have. Are you a seasoned veteran? There's going to be things in here for you. Are you brand new to it? Well, there's things there as well too. So from the beginner to the season, I'd like to say it in sort of a different way, is that this is a software that is not only for Ortho-K lens design, but also to help you manage the flow of the patient through your practice and sort of help you build Ortho-K into your practice. So a little bit of a practice management piece to it as well.
Yeah, I want to go more into that in just a second, but I want to key in on a couple of things that y'all said. So I heard the words simple or simplistic, or not simplistic, but simple and straightforward, and, easy to use. One of my biggest critiques of our industry is this push to position Ortho-K as this is the easy mode for Ortho-K. And I respect what the industry is trying to do, but at the same time, I have been in offices with doctors who are like, I was told this was easy. This was the easy Ortho-K lens. Why isn't this working? And my response is like, look, nothing in Ortho-K in my experience is easy. That's part of the beauty of it. And how is that translated into like the software and the experience for that new fitter? Because I want to speak up for them specifically. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand these key dynamics and factors. So Suk, if you can speak to that, go more into that simple, straightforward, streamlined process with Doctor's Own Design.
Absolutely. And one of the things I'll say is that this was designed for me in my practice. That's where the origin is. And I wanted to keep things simple, and I wanted to be able to check out a patient quickly. For example, to put it in another perspective, the other day I saw a patient, I done the evaluation, and they decided to move forward with Ortho-K, and walked into the front desk, and they were in the checkout process. During that time, I went back to my office, designed the lens, sent the lens to the lab. The lab had, it was in queue for manufacturing there before the patient had even checked out at the front desk. And I think that's powerful. I think it's powerful to think that I can design a custom Ortho-K lens in less time than it took me to refract the patient. I mean, it's pretty powerful for just designing things, but also for patient flow and the way we're doing things in our busy practices. And if you compare our software to, let's say, other custom design softwares out there, I think they all have their place. But I think where we are fundamentally different is in our philosophy. Our philosophy is really what makes the difference. The other day when Mark and I were just banging around some numbers, I ran some numbers through Google because we were just kind of, hypothesizing some stuff, right? And I thought, well, let's put some numbers behind that. And we searched up on Google for what is the U.S. population, right, of people between the ages of 5 and 21. And it comes out, according to the census data that they said, is about 86 million. Okay, so give or take. I mean, I'm kind of best I can remember. And if we say that we have somewhere between 25 to 40% of those are myopes, right? So let's pick 35%. So you're going to have about, let's say, 30 million myopes in that age group from 5 to 21. Now, if you have 30 million myopes, we have, I think the last data was somewhere around 3,000, right? Is that what we figured out? 3,000 ODs that are doing Ortho-K, according to sort of some of the information.
Less than 10%. It's less than 10% of all optometrists.
Yeah, that's
so.
right.
So now, if you take those, 30 million myopes in that age group only, right, and you say, okay, we're going to split these up amongst all of those 3,000 doctors, that's 10,000 myopes a year that each one of them would have to see in order to serve that population, not to mention all the other population that you want to see. But we have about 39,000 optometrists. So if we take that same population of people, right, the 30 million, and split it amongst all of the ODs out there, then we have about 750, that you have to serve per year. Now that's manageable, right? That's a little bit, it's still, a lot to bring in, but it's a little bit more manageable. And, if we're saying that myopia is reaching an epidemic level and it's still growing, it's not coming down, wouldn't you want to have as many soldiers as possible on the field in order to serve this? And so that's where our design philosophy or with our software really kind of comes in. We're not designing a software for the expert to use, right? We're designing a software that makes every user an expert. So that's kind of the idea. It's like we're putting stuff under the hood that is going to help any OD do that. So we're going to put as many people on there on the field that's going to get out there and do myopia management, if you will, of all of our myopes out there, taking care of them. And, again, simple does not mean an inferior design, because ultimately, if you have something that's easy to use and doctors are using this and they're making lenses, they're putting it on the patient's eyes and they're not working, we haven't solved any problems. And so we still need a lens that, design that is superior and that can actually achieve what we wanted to achieve. So that's, I think, how we are different than other people, is that it really comes down to our core philosophy.
Yeah.
And, Matthew, we've been talking about this for years. I know I've been in conversations with your father, Rich Jeffries, about how do we get this to the masses? Like, how can we get Ortho-K so it's not only 3,000 doctors and it's less than 10% fitting it? How do we get it so it's 70, 80% of the doctors fitting in? It's always been, a goal of ours, a goal of the academy, a goal of mine as a myopia, management guy, is, hey, how can we get this to more people? And that's why we built this software, so anyone can use it. We want to get it to as many people, like Sukh said, more soldiers on the field. I love that. Like, as many on the field as we could possibly have.
Yeah, definitely well said. And, I think it speaks directly to the most pressing problem in the myopia industry, because for years, when I was the executive director of the FIAOMC, I was told this is about to blow up. Thousands of people are going to be coming through those doors at Vision by Design. And it just didn't happen in the way that they were describing it. And we have a fundamental flaw in the system, that if we are not empowering the practitioners who are interested in myopia management to get rolling, to get comfortable, to see success with whatever treatment they want to use, because I'm a fan of all of it, then we have a fundamental problem. Carrie has spoken about this in the past, about the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the cases are going to be done by 20% of the potential fitters. And I want that dynamic to change. And I have seen it firsthand where they don't understand what's happening when it comes to, what forces are at work, what elements of design, when it comes to an adjustment. With Doctor's Own Design, obviously, you got Mark Cosgrove, this legendary consultant at your disposal. Let's talk about the adjustment process. Like, if the doctor's designed a lens and let's say things have not gone, perfectly from the get-go, which in my opinion is more often than not. We could put a lens on a patient, treatment looked good for the first 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden things started to change. Well, what's happening there? So when using doctor's own design, what does the adjustment process look like to either one of you, whoever wants to jump in?
I'll answer this. So it's however you want it as an OD. You can go in there and make all the adjustments yourself. We've made it so it's very user friendly. And if you're an advanced fitter and you want to go and make the adjustments, you can do them yourself, or you can do it like you've always done with me. Send me what's going on. Tell me, Mark, this is what's happening, and I can go in and help you walk you through the process. But the good thing about the software is any changes I make. So Matt, you send me over, hey, this is going on, Mark. I go in there and I make the changes that need to be made and I submit it. Well, now you have to go and review and approve that before that lens can be sent out. But it highlights every change I made. So now you go, oh, that lens was riding low and I had some bubbles in the return zone. Oh, well, they flattened the CCC and then flattened the alignment curve. That's what they did on this one. Well, the next time you have one that's doing the same thing, you go, oh, what did we do on that last one? And now you can start doing it yourself. So it helps you become your own designer and your own consultant along the way by highlighting what we're doing. Or if you don't want to do that and you want to send them the way you've always sent them that way. And then we take them from there. I have a great consultation team. Joshua Martinez came with me from Cooper Vision. He was with me over there. He went to Altius for a while, was working with Rich Jeffries there, and he's working with us now. He's a great lens consultant. And then my lifelong friend, Jeff Corbett, he's the other piece of the puzzle. He's just been a friend of mine for 20 years. Our kids grew up together, and we always had a dream of working together. And he's cut from the same cloth as me, and I knew that he would come in and try and make a difference. And Suk and Rick fell in love with him immediately, so he has made that difference. But the adjustment part of it is the same as it's always been. Or I have a lot of doctors like Suk who wanted to do it themselves. They didn't want me to have to call or to have to send that email. They want to just be able to do it themselves. So we built it that way. You can do it yourself if you want, or the way we've always done it, send it on into me and I'll take care of it for you. Either way.
Yeah, I love that, because that was such a huge appeal with working with you from the GP Spec days. I can't tell you how many docs I spoke with personally who were like, what the best thing about working with Mark is that in the very beginning, I don't know anything. And he and his team can come in, hold my hand, walk me through everything. These are the changes we made. I'm learning. And then they say that there's that moment where they don't need their hand held anymore. And I think this really speaks to your pedigree, Mark, because I mean this in the nicest possible way, but when to get out of the way, essentially. When to stop holding the hand is probably the better way to say it. You realize that they've gotten to this point and they are on their path towards advanced fitting, and you then and your team can take on a new role in that equation. I think that's a huge advantage with this product specifically. So let's transition into, because I have another audience question that I want to get to. Let's talk about FDA approval, and let's also talk about where these lenses are manufactured, where they're made, because I think that's also a huge part of the process. Is you use the software to order, and then you need these lenses to get to you in an expedient fashion. But let's start with the FDA question, because I got this a lot, especially from the AAOMC people. So, Suk, why don't you start us out with that?
Well, we really fortunate. We have great partners with Contimac, and Contimac actually, we're covered under the FDA approval for Ortho-K lenses by Contimac and using their material. And we are using Optimum Infinite material for our designs. And it falls under the latest FDA approval that was signed off in May of 2022. And I think Mark can speak a little bit more to that if need be, but we actually partnered also with Excel. Excel Labs. And I'm going to let Mark speak about that a little bit because we had Mark as a lab person go and vet everything there. So maybe Mark can speak a little bit more intelligently about that.
Yeah. I'll speak on both real quick. So for the FDA, we use Contimax FDA approval. It's got approved in May of 2022, and that's what we manufactured lenses, or we design lenses that fit within their parameter ranges that are available through the FDA. As for the lab, I've been in this industry for a long time. I know all the lab guys. I'm friendly with most. I get along great with all of them. I was blown away by Excel. Daryl James is one of the top-notch people in this industry. I've known Daryl just from when we started doing this, and he is just an awesome human being. But I was introduced to him by Tony Caparelli. Tony, anyone who knows Excel, they know Tony. Tony's at all the shows, great guy. And just getting to talk to them, they came to me and said, "Hey, Mark, if you are ever interested in doing anything again, we want to help." And I was like, "Oh man." And a couple other people had told me that as well. But, I always had that huge respect for Excel. So then I, told Suk, "Hey, start ordering your lenses with Excel and let me know how they're doing. Like, let me know what it's like." And, he called me and he was like, "Dude, these lenses, they look, they feel, everything feels just like the lens that I would have got from you years ago." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's what I want to hear." And then, just the day-to-day dealings, we would have weekly meetings with them, his whole team's on board, and just a professional top-notch help. I couldn't be happier with who we're using as a lab and contract manufacturer. They are as good as it gets.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so, I love the added of, Mark vetted, because that is your reputation, your knowledge base. If it doesn't meet your standard of approval. And I love the fact that you were like, "Hey, order these lenses and then let me know if they rise to the bar that I've set for them, my expectations." I think that goes a long way to helping the quality of the product, right? It's got the Mark Cosgrove stamp of appeal on it. I think that's huge. Let's also talk a little bit about cost. I don't want to do numbers. This is another question that came up from the audience. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want anybody else to get in trouble. But let's talk about cost. Is it price comparable to other software solutions in our industry? Mark, you raise your hand.
So first and foremost, the software is free. And I think that's powerful. We don't charge you a penny for the software. So you can use this software and it doesn't cost you anything. Lens price is $138 a lens, which I think is competitively priced in our industry. You get a first exchange at half price, and anything after that is free. But you have to go through a consultant for anything after that. If you want those free lenses and you want to keep going, you have to go through, because something happened on those first two. We're running at a plus 90% first lens success rate. It's over 90%. And this is in our beginning stages when we did have some glitches. So I think that's going to keep improving that number. Very rarely have we had to go to a second and third lens. But when we do that third lens, I have to have it come through me. It has to come through me because something else is going on that the doctor's not seeing. Someone's not seeing. It's rare, even back when I was with GP, that we went to a third or fourth lens, unless it was a very difficult patient. So I'm trying to make sure that we're priced competitively in the industry and we're offering the same type of a service they are. So that's where we're at with cost.
Yeah, definitely. And again, that speaks to the Mark Cosgrove standard of quality, because I love that what you said, like, it has to go through me. If we've gotten this far, I need to be involved in order to help solve the problem. I can't tell you how many offices I've been in where they're like, "Well, we're on our fourth or fifth adjustment. Why isn't this working?" And me personally, it breaks my heart. I'd love to be able to speak to that more, but my knowledge base is not what it needs to be in order to advise in that capacity. So I love what you're saying is, like, if it gets to this point, I need to be involved because I stand behind what this product can do, and I need to figure out why exactly this isn't working. And I think that is such a huge component of Doctor's Own Design. You are definitely getting the wide range of fitter that you're looking for, and then giving them that support level. So where do you see Doctor's Own Design going? Do we have a global reach? Is this just going to be domestic? What is the scope and scale for Doctor's Own Design?
I mean, I think ultimately it goes back to the same thing we were saying, more soldiers on the field, right? There's myopia across the world, right? We'd love to serve as many people as we possibly can, but we don't want to sacrifice sort of the quality of what's coming out, of the usage of it and the support that we're giving our users. And so that's always something in our vision in the future, but we're really sort of laser focused on the US right now. We're new, we're still kind of focusing. We want to make sure everybody is getting what they want and getting all the support that they need in order to, we're really trying to elevate Ortho-K in the market right now. It's a custom premium treatment for the disease of myopia. And so if we're going to be doing those types of things, we need to make sure we're handling that with a high level of sort of class, if you will. Rich, in fact, spent a long time designing a box that we dispense the lens in, for example. And that lens will hold the case will hold the lenses, and it will hold a dispensing suction cup for removing the lens, and something that the doctor can feel proud to hand over to their patient because they did spend a lot of time and energy and into that. There's a lot of service there, and we wanted to make sure that we're holding all that stuff, at a high level of standard of quality in the U.S. market before we ever explore other areas.
Yeah, I love what you said. I've seen videos of early adopters, or you've rolled out the software and the product to some early fitters, and I've seen videos of the unboxing of the Doctor's Own Design product, and I love the design element to it, right? Because Doctor's Own Design, customized, high-end, quality product. And so many optometrists are not fitted to dispense that product to their patient. And you are giving them that premium experience, but not with all the obstacles that come with a premium experience. And I think it really speaks to the how the three of you think together, the whole enchilada, so to speak.
Rich had huge influence on that. Rich with Paragon, he took them to such a professional level and to the next level. And that's what he's doing with us. This box, it's something that him and I have talked about for years. And I just think it's professional. You're able to hand them something that looks like when you get an iPhone and you open it up and it's all packaged real nicely, and you're opening up and you're getting some quality. It's a quality product. This isn't cheap to a patient. This, it's an expensive, it's an investment. So you want to make them feel like they're getting something, not handing them, a flat pack in a clear baggie. It looks like you're making a, drug deal.
Right.
No, we are selling you this is a high-end product, and we want to make it look that way. We're trying to make our software look like it's high-end. Our booth at the last show, high-end. We're trying to take this to the next level, for optometry and for, our industry. This is something that me and Rich and Suk are passionate about, this industry. Something we've dedicated our lives to. Not a lot of people dedicate their lives to myopia management, right? We have, you as well, Matthew. We are guys who have, that's what we have taken on, is this is what we want to do with our lives. I want to be the best at it. And so give the best presentation.
I grabbed the box if you want it. So
yeah, definitely hold it up.
This is how it kind of comes out, and then it has a little flap, opens up, and it has right here has the lenses and a little plunger that goes up top, and then up top has a little message. That it says, our eye care team is excited to present your custom design lenses made specifically for you. Please ask our team about the proper care and handling of your new lenses. So, and then there's places in here for doctors to personalize a little bit and maybe put their own card or contact information directly on that.
Yeah. And this, once again, speaks to the fact that this was created by people who are entrenched in this industry from every level, from the clinical part and the practice managed part, the design part, the support part. And it's like it seems like you guys have thought of everything. And I think that's amazing. Like, that's a huge prospect.
Well, I think that, we would be taking too much credit for that without acknowledging all of the doctors that we actually have using an alpha and beta stages that were sitting there looking at things and say, hey, would be nice to have this. It would be nice to have that. And then we kind of tweaked it a little bit to what things that serve the boots on the ground, right? People like myself who spend all the time. I mean, I still am. While we have this thing going on, I'm a full-time practitioner, right? I'm seeing patients every single day. And so I have to dispense these things. So I wanted to dispense it the way, it's kind of classy and nice to dispense to them. And then other doctors are really giving us a lot of feedback. And I'm very thankful for our colleagues who are sitting there saying, listen, maybe this would be kind of cool. For example, with the modification section of the lenses. We can modify every single curve. One of the things that I personally struggled with when I was using custom design software was I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, well, I got to change the radius of curvature of this, and I've got to change the radius of curvature of that, which, I know how to do, but how much can I change this radius of curvature to have a measurable change on the cornea? I can make a little change and order a new lens. The new lens comes, it doesn't really make a difference because I didn't do enough of a change, right? So that's a skill set that you need to learn. So we said, some of the feedback we had, some of the early users who were new to Ortho-K were saying, I want to know how much it makes a change. So we did what we call steps, right? So there's steps of changes versus radius of curvature. So it kind of takes that piece out of the puzzle, and we just focus on the steps. A step for each change is how much we would have to change that lens design to have a measurable change to the cornea. Does that make sense? And so that way we're talking steps. We're going one step flatter, one step steeper. One of the things Mark just mentioned was the CCC. Well, that's really actually a new term we came up with, which is called the central corneal clearance. Now, obviously, that's not something that nobody else has ever done before, but it helps us describe something that we're changing. So we can change the center of the lens. If it's touching the cornea, we can raise it up off the cornea by one step. One step is a measurable change. Or we could bring it closer to the cornea by one step. So that's, again, a measurable change. And you can do all that without affecting any of the other design parameters. So if the lens is centering and fitting well, and you just want to raise it and just want to lower it because it's touching too much or not touching enough, you can do that independently, and you do it as a step. So that's kind of where the difference comes in that piece as well, too.
Yeah, and I have gotten my hands on the software in anticipation of this episode, and I can speak directly to it. Like, if I can get through the process and feel confident about the lens that I designed using it, I'm not an optometrist. I have very little clinical experience, but I do know a thing or two, and I put this thing through its paces. Like, and the step parameters that you mentioned, I'm like, man, this is so intuitive, because how much does any fitter at any given skill level understand what's happening? And if and this speaks to that streamlined, simple terminology, straightforward presentation, where it allows you to kind of understand what you're doing as the process goes. Because when you make a change, you can see that representation in the new calculation of the lens that you're making. How far can you go with Doctor's Own Design? Like, what kind of cases can we do? Can we do these like super high end cases? Obviously, if this is going to be targeted to all kinds of fitters, you want to get that wide range of categories. So speak to that, Suk, if you can. Like, what's the higher end of design capabilities with the software?
Well, before we get into that, you kind of touched on a point, is that, we gave you access to the software without any training, right? And we just said, hey, go figure it out yourself, right? And that was really to kind of illustrate how easy it was. We have different user levels within the software. One of the user levels is for staff members. And so staff members can go in there, They can actually enter in all the data for the doctor. They can design the lens for the doctor. Of course, the doctor still has to approve it before it goes to the next level, but then the doctor can just tweak a few things and say, okay, I want to, change these little parameters before I go on to the next level. So that is sort of a unique piece of it as well. And if any technician that does not necessarily have a ton of experience can at least design a basic lens, that speaks a lot to that. For the early user, somebody who's new to Ortho-K can get in. And now we go over to the more advanced users. Is there limits put on that? Yes, we want to stay as much as possible within our FDA approvals. That's really our main goal. If you go on beyond that, then we go through a consultation process, either through the software itself or where you have to kind of approve going to higher limits because it will be considered off-label treatment.
Right. And so many great things that you just said there, because I have worked a lot with staff. I came from a staff background. I grew up in a pioneer Ortho-K practice. And whenever I do work with staff, I try to find those key staff members where I'm like, hey, it looks like you're following along with this. Do you want to know more clinically about what's happening with an Ortho-K lens and why these things are occurring and what kind of problems we can run into? And it just occurred to me, like with that staff element, what a great teaching tool for the doctor in their practice. Like, hey, go ahead, implement, put in all the parameters. Let's talk about it. And then I'll hit accept. Like, so smart.
Well,
hats off to you guys. Seriously.
One of the things with that, Matt, is we actually have one of our beta testing doctors who's got an associate who wants to learn how to do Ortho-K. And so the associate is put in, and he put the associate in more as a staff member, not as another using doctor. And so what he does is lets the associate doctor go in there, design the lens completely, but then it has to be signed off by him. So it's kind of like having, when you're in school and you have your attending doctor check off on everything you're doing. So he goes in there and he takes a look at it afterwards, and they sit down together at the end of the day and say, okay, well, this is the lens. This is what I would have done differently. So it is becoming a great teaching tool. With all of the little elements in the software, there's little information things that you can do. So I never want the practitioner to feel like they're alone in the software, that they're just kind of wandering through there. There's little touch points where they can say, for example, CCC, there's a little touch tool there. You press that button, it pops up. So what is the CCC? What is the alignment curve? What is what are all these curves? What do they mean? And it, in really simple terms, kind of explains it to them. So they always got that help there. And then we've dispersed throughout the rest of the software different places where they can request consultation. They can just click a button, request consultation. It's not a live consultation, but then we can take over from there. That goes to Mark and his team for a consultation, and they look into that. So you're never really alone in that aspect of things. So I think it is becoming a great teaching tool organically.
Yeah. And back to that practice management part, anything we can do in the myopia industry to take some of that burden off of the practitioner, to help them develop a quality staff, where it's like, hey, I got this myopia coordinator in my practice. They rock. They know everything I know as far as communication to the patient. And I also trust them with putting in the information. And then I just look it over, press accept. What a great way to streamline the process so that doctor can see more patients, do what they're doing, and the staff can be such an integral part of that process. So let me ask you about this as well. Is it possible, and Mark, definitely jump in on this for sure. Is it possible to make a broken lens essentially in doctor's own design? Are there any guardrails up for that? Like, can I make a lens that simply won't work? Like, what do we have in place to help the doctor with that?
The only way you can really do that is if you put in the wrong inputs. And if you put in the wrong inputs, garbage in, garbage out. So as long as the inputs go in correctly, put in the correct K readings from the topography, the correct RX. The big thing that can, send a bad lens out, first lens, is HVID. HVID is tough to measure. Every topography measures it different, and there are different ways of measuring it on most topographies. So HVID, you can make a big lens or you can make a small lens. That's really the only thing The only input that you could put in that you can screw up that's going to send out a lens that's just not going to work. Like me and Josh did one yesterday where he sent it over to me. He said, Mark, what do you think? And I said, oh, this lens is too big. It's a higher myope. They're getting no correction. I said, well, we're vaulting the cornea. We're not touching it all. We need to be 0.4 smaller. He said, that's exactly what I thought. We sent out the new lens 0.4 smaller. That's the only way you can get something that's really not going to work. Otherwise, it's really hard to mess up.
Yeah, and there is some guardrails built in anyway because we want to stay within the FDA parameters anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So, those guardrails are there. The software limits what you can input, and I think the biggest point Mark is making really is that we need quality input. So, when we take the inputs, we boiled it down to what is the sort of the minimal stuff that we need, right? And then the rest we can kind of put on the algorithm. The minimal stuff we need to know the current state of the cornea, right? So corneal measurements, what is the shape of the cornea? So that's where topography comes in. So good quality topography plays a huge role because what we're doing in Ortho-K is we're changing the shape of the cornea. So we need to know the initial unchanged state before we do make any changes. Then the other piece that we really need is the refraction, because that's telling us, well, how do we want to change the shape? And where do we kind of specifically change that shape? When we start talking about, the fit parameters themselves. So once we have those two pieces of information, everything kind of goes on to the algorithm. The algorithm will, do all the other stuff, the thinking of, when, like Mark was saying, if the Ks are flat, we want to do it in a certain way. If the Ks are steep, we want to do it in a certain way. Those kinds of things are in the algorithm. They're under the hood. So a lot of those guardrails that you're talking about are kind of built into the algorithm, and it just won't let you design something that's going to be, completely off. Unless you put in really bad, let's say you put in a refraction of a -2 when they're a -5, or something like that, you're going to get bad results. But beyond that, I haven't had any major issues at all.
Yeah, I think that's a great set of points to make. When you have someone who's brand new to Ortho-K, there's so much shyness and squeamishness when it comes to designing a lens or even putting in an order that's like, especially if this is one of your first cases, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. Myopia can be such an intimidating prospect. So really, putting that confidence back in the hands of the brand new fitter or the journeyman fitter who's done some cases, there's, in my opinion, there's two kinds of fitters in this world. There's zone fitters and design fitters. Zone fitters know where they fit. They know where their zone is, and they kill it in the zone. They do what they do best when they have full understanding over that part of it. But they can migrate into the design fitter aspect where they start dipping that toe into deeper waters and start experimenting and figuring out how things work. And I think that it sounds like this product does the best of both worlds, right? Because if you're an advanced fitter and you're like, I want to see what happens if we make this adjustment, the product can do that. If you're a brand new fitter is like, I just don't want to break anything. I want to get a lens made and I want to learn along the way. It sounds like it's speaking to that practitioner as well. And I'm super excited to see how far this can go. So I hope you guys will be able to come back onto the podcast so we can talk about it again. And I've known you guys for years. I'd love to have you back to discuss individual topics specifically. There's so many things that we can talk about in this space. So I want to close on that. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I do have some more questions for you guys, but I think we're going to save that for, the supporter side of it. If you guys are willing to come back on or stay on and answer the questions.
Definitely. Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome.
Definitely.
All right. So for everybody else, we'll see you at the next one. Mark and Suk, real quick, let's do the contact information again. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about in this episode, how can people get in touch with you guys?
Well, the best way is really to go to the website, drzonedesign.com, and there's a contact form you can fill out there, put in any questions you might have or just information, and we'll reach out to you. We'll have one of our team reach out to you and talk specifically.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Let me ask you guys one of the follow-up questions that came through. This came through in a couple of different ways. And I think we kind of spoke to it earlier, but I want to know more about the journey of Doctor's Own Design specifically. Mark, was this something that you've always wanted to do? Like, was this kind of in the back of your head as over the course of your career? Because, I don't know how much you want to go into it, but this is, you kind of had a rocky road there at the end with what happened at GP Spec, and don't say anything you're not comfortable talking about for sure. No. But this is why I kind of wanted to save this for the after show, so to speak, or the extended version. So with everything that happened, you had a lot of practices who were kind of, I don't know what to do with my patients now that the IC lens is being discontinued. It sounds like Doctor's Own Design is a perfect, hey, put them in this lens, this is the perfect pickup. So was this something that was always kind of in the back of your head from the early days, and it's developed over your time? And then how did what happened with GP Spec impact, what we have today with Doctor's Own Design?
So I've been, involved in Ortho-K for 30 years, since I was a kid. I started in the industry at 19 years old. I'm 51 now. So, and every company the two companies I work with both of our focuses were Ortho-K. So it's something that, I've done, since forever. It was when I was with the GP specialist, I was the only consultant. And everyone knows that for years. And it got to be where it was tough being the only consultant.
All right, well, that's it for this regular version of the episode, but the discussion doesn't stop here. It actually continues in an extended version of this episode, which is available to our Substack supporters. You can, if you're interested in getting the rest of the episode, consider becoming a paid supporter of the Myopia Mindset. In addition to an extended version of this episode and every other episode that we do, you'll also get access to exclusive monthly bonus episodes of the Myopia Mindset. And I know you're interested. You've made it this far. And for the cost is $12 a month, which is basically the cost of a cup of coffee each and every week. And that's how I like to put it. Listen, if you would buy me a cup of coffee each and every week to nerd out about myopia, to bring on amazing guests, to spread the word about how awesome myopia management is and how more ECPs should be engaged in this specialty, then please consider becoming a paid supporter of the Myopia Mindset. You can do so on our Substack. myopiamindset.substack.com is how you do that. Thank you so much for your consideration. I'll see you at the next one.